Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Average Joe Sports Talk Show. I'm your host, Jay Real, welcoming you to a Friday edition of the show. And oh my gosh, here in the Ruidoso area, it is a winter storm. Freezing, sleet, and as you can see, it's so chilly. I even have to have my jacket in the house, in the studio, because the breeze just goes through the walls into the windows, and it's very cold. Now, what we're going to talk about today is a couple of topics that have been going across the waves over the last few days, and one of them is, can you consider quarterbacks in the NFL lucky or their stats tainted if they play in the Dome Stadium? So let's put this out there to you all. Give us your feedback and comments on this. Drew Brees, would he be the man? Would he be able to play and have the stats and the games that he has if he didn't play in a stadium arena? Now that is a very good question, but it's kind of unfair to say that that's the only reason why they have huge success. But let's just break it down, and then again we'll throw it out to you all. Give us your feedback and comments there on the comment section. So you have your Ben Roethlisbergers, you have your Jay Cutlers, you have your Aaron Rodgers. These guys play in very harsh conditions when it comes to the quarterback position, because they have the conditions that are worse than most. And we could also throw the Ravens quarterback in there as well, because they're just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, where they play in outside harsh elements. Now, we could look over the last 10 years and break it down, and I would have to say that more times than not, the quarterbacks that play in those harsh elements and those harsh conditions win the Super Bowl. I don't know. It's just something that was interesting. I'm not going to say that most players wouldn't want to play in 60, 70 degree weather-controlled atmosphere. I'm sure they would. But it just seems kind of funny how most of the teams that have won the Super Bowl over the last decade seem to be the teams that play in the outside harsh elements. So it's just something that we wanted to throw out to you all. I do believe that Drew Brees is a phenomenal quarterback, whether inside or out. But I do believe that quarterbacks also get used to playing in their type of elements. If you're an inside quarterback that plays in a dome, you're right, after 5, 6, 7 years, you don't want to be outside in 20 below zero, wind blowing in your face, snow blowing in your face. I'm sure you're not going to have the most, best performance of your career in those types of elements when you come from a stadium environment, a dome environment, excuse me. Then you got your Ben Roethlisbergers and all your guys that play in the outside elements, Jay Cutler, all these guys, Aaron Rodgers. When they go from the outside elements to go into a dome or go into a weather, controlled environment, I'm sure they're just loving it and can perform a little bit better, but prefer the harsh elements because they're used to it and they know they have an advantage over players and teams that do not play in those environments. Anyway, so you all let us know what you think. That was one topic that came out over the last couple of days that I just think is interesting. Now, moving on from that, we're going to kind of go back and forth, but right now I have to go to Major League Baseball because Alex Rodriguez is being kicked and annihilated in the press because he walked out on a hearing with the mediator a couple of days ago. The problem is Bud Selig wasn't even there to show respect to the whole system. Now let's break this down, folks. For any of you that do not know, Bud Selig decided with no evidence whatsoever to use his authority, to use his power to basically say, well, there would be enough evidence, or there could be enough evidence, so I'm going to go ahead and use my authority to put down this kind of a suspension on Alex Rodriguez. 211 games, folks. 211 games with no evidence, when all of the other players got 50 games last year, a 50-game suspension. And they want to give Arod 211 games. So I'm not saying it was right for Arod to walk out of the mediator session, but I can also see why he felt totally don't want to say disrespected, but like this process is not going to go well for him because they're not even taking it under consideration that Bud Selig should be there to explain why he decides he can use his power and authority to implement this type of suspension on a player with no evidence when they had the proof and the evidence on the other players and they got 50 games. So it's just kind of weird, and I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to side on the Arod situation here. I cannot get over the fact that this guy has played the way he's played for over a decade. The man has skills. He's been doing well, and he's been, I'm sorry, keep looking. We got fans outside looking in the window, smiling and waving. They just come to check us out all the time. But anyway, Arod has been just so good for baseball, even though he has some bad situations that occurred over the last few years and admitted to taking PEDs for an injury recovery. Again, we did a show on this one a few months back. Would you think it would be okay for athletes to use PEDs or steroids when it involves coming back from a serious injury if it could help the athlete repair and get back on the field, and then they stop? It's just for the recovery process, for the healing process. And we have to say we have no problem with it. But getting back to the Arod situation. So Bud Selig doesn't show up. Arod feels disrespected and feels like, you know what, why even be here if I cannot face the person that is trying to put this kind of a suspension on me and ask him questions on why this is happening. So again, I'm going to have to side with the Arod situation, or the Arod side, and say I guess I understand why he would do that. He is a professional athlete. He has millions of dollars on the line. And as he said in an interview after he walked out of this is his legacy on the line. And a lot of people, again, I don't want to be racial here, but I'm going to say more people that are non-color would have a problem with his legacy over those of color. Because we, when I say we, I'm talking me and the crew, the guys I've sat down and talked to, we have no problem with Arod's legacy. We think he is a phenomenal player. We think that he's broke records and that, you know, the guy made a mistake. Leave it at that. Now, looking at Major League for the way it is, the next question that was brought out over the last few days was, do we as fans, do we as sports lovers care if baseball players use PEDs? Or would we care if they use PEDs? And I'm going to have to say, I'm not saying it's right and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it seems this is just the way it is. If you're an athlete at in any sport, to get to that higher level, to take it to the most ultimate peak, it seems like people do use PEDs. It looks like the athletes are using PEDs. Because how many times in a year do we get the information about some amazing superstar getting busted for using PEDs? It just seems that's the way to go. It doesn't matter if it's track and field, gymnastics, weightlifting, wrestling, basketball, football, baseball, my heaven's sakes, cycling. It doesn't matter. Swimming. It could be any sport, and our major athletes are getting busted for using PEDs or steroids. So this is what I got to say. Hey, you know what? Just like we said about the Tour de France, our Tour de France guy. You know what? Yeah, he might have been using PEDs and he might have been using steroids. But heaven's sake, so was everybody else. So he was the best of the cheaters. And he was the best of the best when it came to cycling, because everyone was using PEDs. So we have no problem with him winning 7 or 8 Tour de France's like that, because again, everyone else was juicing. So when you're looking at baseball, we're going to say, let him juice. My Lord, when's the last time we've had a huge, exciting season of baseball, Major League Baseball, like we did 10 years ago when Sosa, McGuire, and Barry Bonds were fighting neck to neck to win the home run challenge or the home run record? Everybody tuned into it. Even if you didn't like baseball, you loved the news, you loved the idea, you loved the competition of guys fighting for that elite record. And it's not been since then has baseball been so popular. So again, I don't want a bunch of emails and comments and phone calls saying, oh, you want cheating. No, I'm just saying that if you allow it to happen and you allow it to just open the gates, then guess what? We're going to see 70, 80 home runs again. We're going to see those exciting games. And then they're going to say, oh, well, the stats are inflated and you got to put asterisks by this and by that. You know what? Things change. Just like football, football's barely football anymore. You can barely tackle the quarterback. You can't even barely touch a receiver in the open field. You can't crush somebody when they catch the ball. So football's gone way down, changed rules, everything else. So it's time for baseball maybe to look at that. Who knows? We're just throwing it out there to you all. But here at the Average Joe Sports Talk Show, excuse me, we do not mind our players juicing up if it's opened up as an option. We'd love to see some big hits again. So with that said, moving back to football, right now in the news there's a little discussion, which it's not a big discussion or anything by any means. But Donovan McNabb has recently came out and said that NASCAR and NASCAR drivers are not either athletes or NASCAR is not a sport. Now, we've had this discussion and we've talked about this before in prior shows. Is NASCAR a sport? It's kind of hard to say it is, but I can understand why people think about it and see it that way. When you're going 240 miles, 260 miles an hour, and you got to be able to react. Your eye and hand coordination has to be quick. Everything's about reaction. And I mean, you're driving at those kinds of speeds, inches away from another car. I could kind of understand the physicality and the control of one's body, especially their vision and their hand and eye coordination, as I just said, to be able to handle those kinds of situations. Now, typically you don't see NASCAR drivers coming out of their cars with big old guts like they do in golf. They're usually pretty fit and they're pretty trimmed up and bulked out. So I'm going to kind of take a second look at this, and we'll do another show down the road. And another reason why I'm bringing this up is Donovan McNabb, although we appreciate his opinion, and I mean the guy's been in the NFL or was in the NFL for many years, he has a right to his opinion. But I drove a go-kart around a track about 2 months ago, and this thing was just a normal little go-kart track. And I'm going to have to tell you folks, after just running that race for probably 10, 12 laps tops, my forearms, my heart was pumping like crazy. I was out of breath somehow. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me how I had lost my breath. But by the time I got out of that freaking little go-kart, my arms, forearms, hands were sore from just being so clenched. I mean, and it's going like maybe 30, 40 miles an hour. Tops, probably 20. So to think of these guys that run for hundreds of laps at those kinds of speeds, enduring those kinds of situations and issues, we're just going to have to reevaluate this. We'll take another look at it. Thanks to Donovan McNabb for bringing this up, and for Jimmy Johnson also tapping into the topic, saying, you know, he disagreed with Donovan McNabb and that he feels overwhelmingly that these guys are athletes and this is a sport. And so we'll have to just take a look at it. So with that said, we are going to have to get back out there and brave these weather conditions. But before we head out, we have to thank the Player Zone, our big sponsor. Again, all the sports memorabilia. They do Magic the Gathering, Pokemon. They have all your Christmas needs. Stop by the Player Zone. Whether it's comic books, sports cards, memorabilia, Star Wars figures, books, you name it, they got it. Then we got to thank Freestyle Jewelry and Freestyle Productions. Again, big partners with us on the big No Bully Zone. Why Bully Be a Friend campaign. We're just all partnered up with them. And again, Seeping Springs RV Park and Campground. Can't say enough about them. They're located in the Downs on Highway 70. Just an amazing place to go when it's not freezing cold outside. And then finally wrapping up with right on time errand delivery service. Again, been with us since the beginning. But hey, that's it. No pain, pretty easy. We just want to say to all of you, have a great weekend, be safe, and we'll see you on Tuesday's show. J Real signing out. God bless.